let's cultivate our motivation and recall, as monastics, we have a responsibility for our own internal cultivation, our own practice. And we also have a responsibility to repay the kindness of everyone else who supports us. And so with an attitude of compassion for other living beings and an awareness of their kindness to us, a recollection of our interdependence, then let's generate the bodhicitta motivation and learn and talk about monastic life for the long-term purpose of attaining full awakening as a way of enacting wisdom and compassion in society and towards every living being we meet. So yesterday we were talking about the reasons that the precepts were established and how the reasons don't define just the precepts, but the whole understanding of monastic life and our place in the world. And so in talking about that, we talked about the importance of harmony in the Sangha, in terms of our own personal practice, in terms of the existence of the Dharma in the world, and how important the Sangha community is, and how important within having a Sangha community that there's harmony. So the Buddha also spoke about 6 harmonies, okay, that the Sangha members have together. So I thought I always like to discuss these because they really, talk about the attitudes that we should have. So the first one is harmony in the body, or physical harmony. And so this refers to living together peacefully. So on the physical level, we don't harm each other, we don't beat each other up, we don't drag each other out of rooms. We live together peacefully. And on a physical level, if we live peacefully, then everybody feels safe. Yeah, we all know how important it is for us to feel safe, and physical safety is a big aspect of that. Yeah. So on a broader perspective, imagine if everybody in the world just had physical safety today, or if everybody in the world took the first precept for one day. Yeah, the newspapers would have to find something totally different to write about. Yeah. But we're setting up a community where safety, especially physical safety, is a priority. Yeah. So that already sets the stage for harmony. The second one is verbal harmony in our oral communication and written communication. So communication clearly is something that's quite important, and we communicate with others all the time. Sometimes our communication is verbal, sometimes it's written, sometimes it's through gestures or expressions on our face, but all this way of communication. So here the harmony in communication involves not having disputes, verbal disputes. So What do you think about that? Is that easy or hard?
It's a good practice.
Shall we change the subject? Yeah, because we all know when there's verbal disputes, it's because the other person is wrong. You know, what they're doing is wrong. It's very clear. I am right and you are wrong. And the reason we're having a dispute is because you're stubborn and you refuse to do things my way. You know, if you were any kind of sensible human being, you would realize I'm right and all you have to do is follow my way. And then we will live happily ever after. Right? The problem is we all think that. But that everybody should follow our way. But what the way is different. Okay? So we often wind up with communication disputes, don't we? Some of them are mere misunderstandings because we didn't explain ourselves well, we were rushed or hurried, we didn't give the full amount of information somebody needs. Sometimes the verbal disputes arise because, just like I said, we're right and the other person's wrong. Sometimes they arise because somebody offended me. How can they do that? They called me a name. They insulted me. They abused me. They did this and they did that and they did the other thing. And I'm just sweet, innocent, beneficent, kind me. And these people are picking on me all the time. And they're so rude. Yeah? So I have every right to be angry at them. In fact, my anger is for their benefit. Because if nobody tells them that their speech is wrong, they'll continue to talk that way to everybody else. So I have to correct them out of compassion. Right? Yes. In America, some years back, we got involved in a war in Iraq because we were trying to get rid of Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. Do you remember that? As it turned out, there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But one thing that's important, this is a weapon of mass destruction. Yeah? If we are not mindful of our speech, we destroy people's lives. Yeah. Sometimes worse than if we physically harm them. Yeah. We make them lose self-confidence. We denigrate them. Yeah. We spew out our prejudice, our bias. Yeah. So we have to be very careful with what our mouth does, because our communication can benefit people or it can damage people. And whenever we speak, we are creating karma. So the speech not only affects others, but it creates the karma that we ourselves will experience the result of. Yeah. When we damage others, we damage ourselves. And learning to work with our speech is very difficult. Yeah, very difficult. It takes a lot of care. So the precepts, of course, help us in that respect. But, something that I've found is we need to be quite clear in our own mind that we are the ones responsible for our own feelings, and we are the ones responsible for our communication. So we can never point the finger to somebody else and say, you made me mad. Yeah. You insulted me. You did this. You did that. It's always your fault. Have you noticed? Yeah. Isn't that one of the first things we learn in Dharma? Yeah. That our happiness and suffering don't come from outside? It's one of the first things we learn. And it is so hard to remember because our habit is that suffering comes from outside. So we get offended, we get irritated, we project something onto somebody else, and we blame them. And then we attack. Yeah. Now, sometimes we attack by exploding and dumping our anger on them. So we insult, abuse, berate other people. Other times, we explode by completely withdrawing from the situation. Yeah? You leave, close the door, you go to your room, you sit there and stew. Because you don't want to explode on the other person, so you sit there and you're so angry. Inside, going round and around. You know what I'm talking about? Rerunning the situation. Oh, I want to say this, I want to say that. So we replay it, we ruminate, we stew. Or we go to our room, close the door. They didn't talk to me this way. Nobody appreciates me. Right? Okay, so there's kind of those three ways. Explode, stew, and feel sorry for ourselves. Yeah. We may have a certain style of these three that we prefer more, or we may alternate between the three. Yeah? But the whole thing is, we're responsible. Yeah? So, it has to do with working with anger. I'll get to that over the weekend, because we're talking about anger over the weekend. But here, really watching, in a Sangha community, watching how we speak to each other. And what I've noticed, especially in our Tibetan tradition, because we respect our teachers so much, that we're very careful in our communication with our teachers. And then we take everything out on the fellow disciples. Yeah? When we're with our teachers, we are so sweet, aren't we? Oh, yes, Rinpoche. Yes, Geshe. Yes, I won't do this, I won't do that. Yes, yes, yes. We do more, we speak kindly. We're very nice. Then we leave the room. We're not with our teacher anymore. Who do you think you are asking me to do this? You asked me to sweep this room. It is your job to sweep the room. I'm not your servant. Then our teacher enters. Oh, yes, so sweet. Okay, so oral communication is a big issue, yeah? Not only for harmony, but also for the karma that we create. At the Abbey, we've started to use Nvc, Nonviolent Communication, which we'll do a couple of sessions of over the weekend. No, 3 sessions, because we have 3 days, don't we? So it's a way of communicating that's really interesting, because you talk about your feelings and your needs without involving the other person in them. And you talk about their feelings and their needs without making yourself responsible for them. So it's very helpful in us figuring out, what am I feeling and what is it I'm needing? Because what we've realized in our community is so often we don't know what we're feeling and we don't know what we're needing. And instead, the default method is to blame the other person for not making us happy and not doing what we want. And as we all know, through doing it multitudes of times this life, never mind previous lives, blaming others and harsh speech doesn't work very well. We may intimidate somebody enough so that they do things our way. But that is not their respecting us. Respect and intimidation are two different things. So we may push our way on so much that other people just finally capitulate and go along. But that doesn't mean that there's harmony. Because if we don't give them a chance to speak, and if we don't listen well when they do speak, then there's not going to be harmony, even if they just go along with it. Listening is a key factor in communicating. In school, they don't teach us how to listen. We have one mouth and two ears. That's indicative of what we need to do more of. We need to listen more. But in school, they don't teach us how to listen. They teach us how to speak. We have all sorts of, public speaking classes and all of that. But how to listen? So listening is a real key element of communication. If we listen from the heart, then we see that the person in front of us is another sentient being who's just like us. They want happiness, they don't want suffering. If we listen from the heart, that's what we see. And then we can reflect back to them. Oh, you feel upset because you need communication. You feel lonely because you need to talk to somebody. You need to feel connection. If we listen properly, we can understand what's going on in somebody else. And so often just letting them know that we understand what they're feeling and what they're needing, that already cures half the problem. But we have to learn how to listen from the heart. And to listen from the heart, we have to sometimes put our own feelings and needs on hold, so that instead of thinking of how we're going to respond to what they say, we can try and really listen to what they're saying. When somebody says to you, "You're always bossing me around and you don't respect me," then we usually go, "I respect you plenty and I'm not bossing you around." And then of course they say, "Well, yes you are, you did this and you did that." We say, "No, I didn't in any way, you're the one who's bossing me around, you did this and you did." And then of course it continues. If we stop, when somebody is saying, you don't appreciate me and you're bossing me around, if we stop at that point and just say, "It sounds like you're feeling upset because you need respect," then the other person's likely to go, "Yeah, I'm very upset because I do need respect. And you're not respecting me." And sometimes they're still agitated. But you keep on, "Oh, you're angry because you need some appreciation." So you reword it, you let that person know that you understand what's going on with them. And that helps them to calm down. You don't need to defend yourself. Yeah, there's nothing to defend. Because if you can show that you understand that other person, and then if they have a legitimate gripe because we weren't listening, to them, and we did have an attitude of arrogance that we identify in ourselves, then we can learn, oh, okay, I wasn't communicating very well, and my own mind was afflicted at that moment. So I need to work on this myself. Okay, so there's a whole way of working with this so that we can learn how to communicate better. So that verbal harmony, very important in the Sangha, as we all know, because that's, how we don't usually beat each other up. Yeah, once in a while somebody may hit somebody else, but not so often. It's usually verbal. So learning how to communicate. Yeah, and communicating isn't just avoiding disputes. It's because sometimes if you avoid the oral dispute, still in your mind, there's a dispute going on. It really involves resolving conflicts. Yeah, and acknowledging that conflicts exist, and that conflicts are not the end of the world, and that conflicts can be an opportunity for everybody involved to grow. So at the Abbey, I was telling you yesterday about our stand-up meetings. At the end of the stand-up meetings, there's a verse that we recite, kind of setting our motivation for acting in the day. And the verse acknowledges that, yes, there may be conflicts, but to see them as opportunities for good communication and for growth. Yeah? And so, really resolving conflicts with the other person and resolving our share of the conflict in our own mind through our own internal practice, that these are a very important part of Dharma practice. Okay? So in community life, your community life is part of your personal practice. Yeah. I'm sure you've all heard the story about the meditator who stayed in solitude, meditating on fortitude, and thought he had so much fortitude and calm in his mind. And then he went to town and somebody insulted him and he exploded. Okay? So they always tell us this story because we have an English expression, the proof of the pudding is the proof is in the pudding. So how the pudding tastes is what's in the pudding. It's what you would say in Italian, the taste of the torta is, the proof is in the torta, okay? If your cake tastes good, it's good. If your taste looks good, but tastes bad, bleh. Okay? So it means that the measure of your practice is how you deal with daily life situations. Yeah? So what we do on the cushion is preparation for daily life situations. It's not something separate from them. Huh? So if you value it, so then you use your life in the community as a way of checking up on how your practice is doing. Because when you get irritated at somebody, it's like, okay, yeah, my fortitude is not so strong. By the way, I translate it as fortitude, not as patience, because I don't think patience is such a good word to use for that term. Okay, patience implies you're waiting for somebody. Be patient. Just wait a little longer, But fortitude, it means you're developing inner strength. Yeah. So you have fortitude against against suffering, against conflict. You have inner strength when those things happen. Okay? So in our practice, on a sitting, we go through situations that happened in our life and apply the teachings to those situations so that we learn how to resolve, conflicts that we've had in the past and put those conflicts, resolve them, put them in peace, put them down. And in that way, we also develop familiarity with the different techniques for working with our emotions. And the more familiar we are with those techniques, then the easier it is to recall them in an actual situation. Okay? So community life is part of the practice. Did I mention yesterday the analogy? I don't think I did, of the rocks in a tumbler. Yeah, when you put rocks in a tumbler and you tumble the rocks around, they knock off each other's rough edges and they polish each other. Yeah. If you've ever made pills for Rinpoche, I was in charge of making pills for him, and many years ago at Tushita. You make the pills and then you put them in a bag and you roll the pills back and forth, two people. Each one holds one end of the bag and you roll the pills back and forth. And it smooths the pills. It chips off the rough edges. In the same way, rocks in a tumbler chip off each other's rough edges. And similarly, living in community, we wear away at each other's rough edges. Yeah, because that's what happens. Because we have to change when we live together in order to get along. Yeah? If you're not willing to change, then what use is Dharma practice? Yeah? I mean, isn't Dharma practice all about working on ourselves? Isn't it about changing? So that part of us that says, I'm not going to change, that part is shooting ourselves in the foot. Yeah? Because Dharma practice is all about change. It's all about questioning what's going on inside of us and questioning our behavior. Yeah? So we have to be open, and in that way, our interactions with everybody become part of our own personal growth. And it's really beautiful when you see this happen in the community. Yeah. And at the Abbey now, we've been around enough, you can really see people change. It's quite nice. Nobody's perfect. Everybody loses that. But you can see that people are getting better, that they're working on it. And it's very rewarding. Okay? So to see that in our Dharma friends and to know that they're seeing it in us too. It's incremental, it's slow. We all have our stuff where we get stuck, don't we? Yeah. Every one of us has a thing where people may try and help us, but at a certain point we totally shut down. We cannot take in anything. And it gets sometimes into very deep habitual psychological issues or karmic obstacles. And we all have them. And they come up in community life. Because you live together, work together, do everything with the same group of people. And the group of people you're with ordinarily consist of many people that you wouldn't speak to if you were a layperson working. Yeah? If you're a layperson working, okay, you may have some colleagues that you don't get along with, you just avoid them. Then you go home to your family, everybody understands you, they're nice to you, or at least they're supposed to be. Yeah? In a monastery, there's nobody to go home to that's going to tell you how wonderful and special you are and that they love you to bits. Yeah? There's nobody. Who are you going to go cry to in the monastery? Because nobody, if they're really good Dharma friends, they're not going to say, yeah, that person spoke to you and did this to you and did that to you, and they're totally wrong and you're totally right, and let's get even and do something to them. If you have real Dharma friends, nobody's going to say that to you when you go cry to them. They're going to say to you, it sounds like you're really angry. Yeah? How are you working on your anger? How else can you think to deal with your anger and your upset? How else can you look at the situation? Did you ever consider karma? Yeah. Are you sure you understood what that other person said? A real Dharma friend will say that. But of course, we want somebody who's going to please our ego, don't we? But real Dharma friends, and this is really a role of our teacher, and of our Dharma friends to help us in this way. And so that helps us to change, it helps us to grow. And so we change, the community becomes more harmonious also. Because anyway, who wants to live in a community where people quarrel? Do you? I don't. Many years ago, when the Abbey began, we had one building which we slept in. It was the bedrooms, the offices, the kitchen, the dining room. Everything happened in that one building because we didn't have other buildings. Unless you wanted to go to the barn, yeah, but so we had to, at one point we had to do some remodeling to enlarge the kitchen dining room area. And it so happened that this was happening right before I was going away on a trip like this. I was going to be gone for some weeks, I think, in Asia. So we were kind of doing some of the planning for the remodeling. Some of the people there had remodeled, construction skills. We were going to do it ourselves. So we were talking about it, and one person goes, "Okay, yeah, let's open this entrance and make it wide like that." And another person said, "No, I don't think we should do that. We should remove this." And somebody else said, "No, let's move that wall." And somebody else, "No, let's do this." Anyway, but if we do that, where are we going to eat? And, we'll only have to eat cold food. No, I don't want to eat just cold food. While we're remodeling, we have to find another place to cook. And this whole discussion started happening. And I just went, "Okay, everybody. Yeah, stop." And then I said, I'm going away. If you're all going to quarrel, and if we are all, even whether I'm away or not, here or not, if everybody's just going to quarrel, then actually we don't need to remodel the building because none of us are going to want to live here, because who wants to live in a community where all people do is quarrel? Silence. Yeah, they got the point. As it so happened, I went away. They arranged to bring a camping stove downstairs. They cooked downstairs. It was very inconvenient, but everybody got along very wonderfully while they remodeled the kitchen. Yeah? Because everybody knew that, nobody wants to live in a community where people are at each other's throats all the time. So that means we all have to change. We all have to give something up for the sake of community harmony. And you can see this problem, between groups in society, between countries, and especially now the politics of so many countries. Everybody's digging in their heels and saying, my way's right, your way's wrong. Yeah. And what's it doing? It's creating a mess in our countries. Yeah. And it's creating a mess internationally. Because everybody's just saying, no, I won't change. And you have to do things my way. Doesn't work. So that's why we ordained, isn't it? Because we realize that the ways of the world don't work for resolving conflicts. Yeah. But in seeing that and knowing we have to change, then we have to, it's difficult. We have to come up against some of our very deep issues. Yeah, and be willing to look at them for the sake of creating harmony. Okay, so that's harmony, the second harmony in communication. Okay? The third harmony is harmony in the mind. So this means appreciating and supporting each other. So this involves training our mind. Yeah, we have to train our mind to see people's good qualities. I don't know about you, but my mind is very well trained in picking out people's faults. Yeah? I have that talent. Very well refined. Yeah. I can pick out people's faults, subtle, gross, everything. Unfortunately, that talent doesn't serve me very well. And I've had to really learn to appreciate other people's talents and to overcome the jealousy that I've had that other people can do things better than me. Because when you're jealous, then, of course, you want to belittle the other person who's better than you. Because if you can belittle them, then it makes you feel that you're better. Which is a very sick way of establishing self-esteem. And it doesn't work at all. But we do it anyway. Okay. So I remember, because you all know how we sit in ordination order. Yeah? So when I first ordained, I looked up the line, yeah, at all the nuns who had ordained before me. And yeah, they had some good qualities, but this one did this, and that one, this one really, especially, you know what? The one who sat next to me. She was really bad. In fact, I'll show you how bad she was. You know, how my vision of her was really right. Because other people, once a layperson said about her, boy, she's really an angry nun. And somebody replied, you should have seen her before she started practicing. Yeah. So I'm right in my vision of her. She was really angry. And then the one beyond that, yeah, she never let me in to see her, but she was so bossy. And the one beyond that, you know, I was jealous of because she could lead meditations better than I could. And the one beyond that, you know, spoke Tibetan and I couldn't speak Tibetan. So, you know, well, she spoke Tibetan, but she didn't do it very well. You know. So I had some criticism everybody who was senior to me. Looking down the line, oh, much easier to criticize. Oh, this one's a sloppy young nun. She doesn't wear her robes right. This one's hair is too long. That one doesn't make her bed. That one this, that one that. I had criticism for everybody, you know? And the result was that I must be the best one around because there was faults with everybody else. Okay? Needless to say, I was very unhappy for a number of years. Yeah? And had a lot of problems with people. That was just with the nuns. You should have seen me with the monks. You saw me with the monks.
I saw the monks with you.
And the monks with me, yeah. Rafa once told me that he had this image in his mind of starting at that end of the courtyard of, was it me walking fast with one monk chasing me, or one monk walking fast with me chasing him? Anyway, we couldn't talk to each other, you know. It was just, and it was all their fault. But I'll tell you that story over the weekend. Yeah, it's always everybody else's fault. But you'll agree with me, won't you? Because you're my friend.
We walked a lot. We were walking far away. That's
Yeah. That was my exercise, wasn't it?
Good. Very fun.
Yeah, I just had to take off. Because they didn't treat me properly.
Well, that's true.
Okay. Anyway, I'll save that story. It's a good story. Thank goodness it's now a story and it's not what's happening. Anyway, okay. So I had to do some mind training to learn to see the good qualities of people. Yeah? And to really learn to overcome my feelings of inferiority and my jealousy because people were better than me. Yeah? And it's a process of training. You know, it just didn't happen like this. It was a process of being able to look at everybody up the line and everybody down the line, see their good qualities, see their potential, and rejoice. And I remember one time, many years later, you know, sitting in line and really being able to go from one person to another and mentally in my own mind think something positive about each one of them. And it was a real big transitioning thing for me. Yeah, it made a big difference in how I felt inside and my relationships with other people. Yeah. And eventually, in terms of the jealousy, I had to come to the conclusion that it's very good that other people are better than me, because if I were the best one, our world would be in big problems. Okay? We would be severely limited if I was the best one. It's good other people know more than me. And it's good other people have opportunities that I didn't have. That one sometimes, oh, it's so difficult. They have good opportunities and I don't. I told you yesterday how I would get jealous of the people who got to go do puja in Rinpoche's room, and I couldn't go because I had to work or I had to do this or that, you know. And people who are close to the Lama, but I'm not close to the Lama. Why can't I do this? Oh, it was terrible, you know. And just the whole scene around the Lama, you know, everybody like wanting attention, going into the kitchen. He told me to bring him a cup of tea. You can't make the tea. Rinpoche asked me to bring him a cup of tea. Get out of here, I'm making it tea. You know? I get to make Rinpoche's tea, carry it, and then be such a sweet disciple. Put it down slowly and gently. Think about bodhicitta that I'm offering to all the Buddhas and Buddhas. After telling somebody else off and creating a hoopla in the kitchen. Yeah. But this happened a lot when I lived here too. You know, when there was a Lama in the Valletta, everybody wanted to wash the Lama's dishes because we all wanted to be in the Valletta close to the Lama. But nobody wanted to wash the dishes in the big kitchen. Yeah? Why? Those are the dishes of sentient beings. Who cares about sentient beings? I'm a groupie. I want to be with the Lama and wash his golden, blessed dishes. Yeah. I don't know if people do that anymore. But anyway, that was the scene when I was here. And with many other Lamas in other places. Yeah. Oh. I don't want to be in that thing anymore. Too painful. Yeah. So learn to rejoice. Somebody else gets to make the tea for the Lama. Fantastic. Somebody else gets to wash his dishes. Somebody else gets to do puja at 4 o'clock in the morning. Somebody else gets to be a secretary. It's fine. Yeah. Actually, my life is already full of so many amazing opportunities that I can't even believe that I ever created the karma to have. Yeah, if I really look at my life already, it's stupendous. Why do I need to be jealous of a few small things that other people do? Yeah, it's good for them. They benefit from it. If I can rejoice, then my own mind is happy. So that was a big training too. Gone through due to suffering. Yeah, because jealousy is a big suffering. And rivalry among the disciples for the teacher's attention is a big suffering. One time, Lama said something that made me feel slightly better about that. Because I always felt left out, and he favored, of course, yes, he has equanimity. But these people got to be with him more often. Because I wanted to be nearby so I could watch, so I could learn. I had a Dharma reason for being nearby. I wanted to learn by seeing how my teachers acted. But, so and so and so and so got to be nearby. And some of these people who got to be nearby, oh my goodness. So, I won't mention names. You and you know who I'm talking about. Yes. Since you see, this is the advantage of having old Dharma friends. Yeah, they know who you complain about. So one day Lama said, and I can't even begin to mimic Lama's speech, but he basically said, sometimes you think I'm favoring one disciple over another, that I have only the good disciples close to me. Actually, sometimes, dear, it's the disciples that are the disaster that I keep close to me, because they're the ones who need the help more. That made me feel slightly better. Because certain ones were, in my opinion, real disasters. You see, my opinion's right. Let me tell you another story. I'm getting off into personal stories, but maybe it will help you in some way. So, a story. After I was in Taiwan, I came back. Some of the Chinese nuns that I had met there came to His Holiness's teachings, And then they wanted to go to Taiwan. So I was kind of being the hostess, and, at Kopan, and arranged for them to have lunch with Rinpoche. So, of course, having lunch with Rinpoche is a big deal, difficult to do. It's a real honor and a privilege. And because they were foreign guests, that was able to happen. And because I was the hostess, I was able to tag along. So we go up to the little lunchroom. I don't know what it's like now there. I haven't been to Kopan in many years, but it was a little small room where we ate lunch. So lunch started, we were starting, and we had about 10 minutes to talk. And then at the same time during that, there was some big meeting of FPMT or CPMT or some big meeting. Anyway, somebody from the meeting comes in to our lunch, unannounced, opens the door, walks in, and says, Rinpoche, this is what happened in the meeting. And you know how long I've worked for this organization and everything I've done, and this and this and this and this and this. And now these people are insulting me, and they're calling me names, and they're not cooperating with me. And this just isn't fair, this isn't right. And I'm sitting there thinking, I know why they're mad at you. I know why they think you're uncooperative. But I was in front of my guru, so I kept my mouth shut. Rinpoche responds to him, yes, I know you've done so much for the organization, many years. You've offered your talents, your time to do so much. These people don't understand. You need to, just kind of don't listen to them. Rinpoche was so consoling to this person, telling this person how much they had done, how unfair the other criticism from the other people was. What's happening here? This guy is a beep, 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 beep. Everybody knows he's hard to get along with. And Rinpoche is speaking so kindly to him. Anyway, this is our time for lunch with Rinpoche, with these foreign guests, and this guy stomped into the room and took over the whole lunch. He didn't just complain to Rinpoche for 5 or 10 minutes. He was there for like a half an hour, having his own private interview with Rinpoche so that my friends did not get to talk to Rinpoche. I had fire coming out of my ears. I was so mad, So this is a big opportunity for practicing the Dharma, for learning to say, this person had needs. Rinpoche, look how amazingly kind and compassionate Rinpoche was to that person. I would have kicked him out and scolded him. But look how Rinpoche was so kind and compassionate. And this person has real problems that it's hard for him to practice. He has some really bad karmic obscurations. And he needs some compassion. And look what Rinpoche was giving him. Meanwhile, the two Chinese nuns, I apologized over and over and over to them. And they said, oh, it's fine, we know how it is. It's fine, don't worry about it. We were glad that we were just able to meet and talk to him for a few minutes. They were like so even-keeled while I was burning. Yeah, but to me, really to learn to say, no, it was good. And that person had needs. And of course, Rinpoche's kindness didn't change him from one day to the other. But probably a little bit went in and a little bit happened. And so it took me a while, actually, to recognize that the way I was trained was, let's put her in a difficult situation and let her figure it out. That's how she'll grow. Yeah. So that was the kind of disciple I was. I was not the kind of person that if my teachers came to me and said, "Oh, children dear, you're so wonderful, but you know, you have a little problem, just a little problem with anger that you need to work on." If they said that to me, I couldn't have heard it. I would have heard, "Oh, only a little problem, I'm okay. I'm the best disciple." You know, that wasn't the way to train me. How did they train me? "Oh, let's put her in this difficult situation, and let's put her in that difficult situation, and that one over there, and then let her figure it out." So it was training by fire. It took me years to understand what was happening, because I resisted it. Why? I resisted it. But then I figured out what was happening, and yeah, that was the skillful way to get through to me. That was the only way to get through to me. Okay? So, you know, learning to take everything as part of our training. Because it is part of our training. Whether it's with our teacher directly or it's whoever we're dealing with at from one moment to the next. Yeah? That's our training. That person is our practice. Okay, so the third harmony is appreciating and supporting each other. Where are we in time? Where's the clock? Oh, it's in front of my nose, of course. Okay, let's just pause here. I'm only through 3 of the 6 trainings. I thought I was going to go quickly, but it took more time. Do you have questions or comments so far?
The second point that you talked about was verbal harmony.
Yeah.
So, what kind of conflict resolution do you have in Sravasti Abbey? How do you deal with conflict?
Yeah.
If there is a conflict.
Okay. We use Nvc a lot. If it's a conflict between 2 people, initially we have the 2 people meet and usually 1 or 2 observers there to help them learn to talk to each other without saying you. Okay? Now people are much more skilled, and now people also have a stronger determination to resolve things. So it often isn't so necessary to have a third person there. Yeah? Because people know now that when there's conflict, it's got to be resolved. Okay? So, what's a good example? Okay, so recently what happened is some benefactors undertook a fundraising thing to raise money because we needed a new car. Then when other people heard we needed a new car, 2 other people donated cars. So that meant that we were having 3 cars coming, which meant that we needed to get rid of some of the old vehicles. And we needed to also schedule, because one of the cars was coming now, another one was coming after a month, another was coming after 3 months. Some of the cars were coming in the winter time. We have snow there. You need to either have 4-wheel drive or you need to have studded tires. Some of the cars didn't have either one of those, so we needed to change the tires or do something. We didn't want to give away the cars that could ride in the snow, that could drive in the snow before the end of winter in case we needed them, because the new cars couldn't do that. So there was a lot to negotiate. So we formed a committee. And then unfortunately, there wasn't very good communication because we thought that the committee was going to make proposals, or what was it? We thought they were going to make proposals and then the community would vote, but instead the committee made a decision, but not everybody in the community agreed. And so there were a bunch of people who had different ideas of which cars to accept and when we should give the old cars away and what we should do. And so because of the misunderstanding of who exactly was making the decision and when it was being made, there was some conflict. So we noticed that. So then, what I said is in Vinaya, there's this thing called a Sangha Karman. And it's to do a Sangha Karman in the community. It's done by the people who are fully ordained. And when a Sangha Karman is an act of the community, it's a formal decision of the community. Before you do the Sangha Karman, you have to have all the details worked out so that the Sangha Karman is a ritual that just cements what you've already worked out. And after that, the Sangha Karman, nobody can raise the issue again. And if for some reason or another you cannot be present at the Sangha Karman, you have to give you have to explain why you can't be there, and it has to be a good reason, and you have to, before the Sangha meets, give your consent to whatever the Sangha decides. And the Sangha has to, the decision has to be by consent of everybody present. Okay? So since there was all this going on, I said, okay, this is a perfect example of when to do a Sangha Karman. We do need to do a Sangha Karman to really decide about the cars. But before we do the Sangha Karman, we have to figure all this out. So then what we do is everybody, we decided everybody can give their ideas, everybody's opinion will be heard, but the people on the committee will make the decision. Because those people had more knowledge about cars and everything like that. So we decided that's how we'll make, we'll do that, we'll see what the committee comes up with, unless, and everybody beforehand will say to the committee, okay, remember about driving in the snow, and remember about how many miles you have on the car, remember about this, and gave them all the criteria for making the decision, the different things to take in. So we did that, the committee made a decision, they presented it to the community, nobody had any big qualms with it, and then we did this Sangha Karman. Okay, and a Sangha Karman, you make, for this kind, there's different kinds of Sangha Karman. For this particular one, you make one announcement, then you make 3 proclamations where you say repeatedly to the Sangha what we're about to decide, and if anybody disagrees, they should speak now. If nobody disagrees, then there's a conclusion, and the person doing it says, okay, nobody's spoken up, this is our conclusion. So we did that, and it was decided, and it's been okay. Yeah. So that was an example of a conflict that involved many people. Sometimes there's a couple of people in our community who fly off the handle very easily. Yeah, they fly off the handle in different ways. Yeah, but they get upset easily. And almost everybody has had a run-in with them. Yeah, even sometimes our guests. But these people know that they have a problem. Yeah, And so now when somebody has a run-in with them, the person who had the run-in, okay, we have a problem, that person, I have a problem, then they meet together and they talk about, they try and use the NVC methods, because so often behind, we may be arguing about how to stack the dishes after you wash them, but the real conflict isn't about how to stack the dishes. The real conflict is can my voice be heard? Can I make a suggestion and will somebody listen? Yeah. Am I appreciated? Or sometimes the conflict, is when I grew up, we couldn't voice any disagreement with authority. So now I have a lot of issues with authority. And here's somebody who is in charge of the kitchen for these 3 months because we have a rota. So she's in charge, she makes decisions she expected everybody to do, and I just have a knee-jerk reaction because of my authority issues, because when I grew up I could never say anything to my parents, who were the authorities, without getting in trouble. So then people realize, this isn't about her making the decision. This is old stuff for me regarding authorities. Yeah, because I don't like people telling me what to do. It started with my parents, also my teachers. I don't like people telling me what to do. And that's just person happens to be one person in a whole string of people that push my button of my authority issue. So people come to know, okay, it really, this is something that I have to deal with. I have to deal with the part that's my authority issue. She has to deal with the part of how she says something to other people. Yeah. And why does she come on too strong? Again, because she has issues of her own that she's trying to work through. And she feels that only by coming on strong can she be heard. Yeah. So then we all learn to see, this whole thing of transparency. We learn to talk to each other more deeply about what the real issues are. And then after that, you realize, it doesn't really matter how the dishes are stacked. Yeah? And, so are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? So that's how we work with stuff. Because if two people are having a dispute, if it doesn't get worked out soon, it influences the entire community. Because the energy is there, isn't it? Yeah. And so we really encourage people to work it out soon. Now, sometimes people are so angry that they can't take in new information. Psychologists have a term for it. It's a refractory period. Your emotion is so strong you can't take in any information that contradicts your emotion. So sometimes we have to wait until people's emotion settles down a little bit. Wait a day or two and then talk to each other. Yeah. But there's a very strong communal feeling of we're in this together and we have to work it out together. And this is our practice. Yeah. You look. Yeah.
Sometimes the feeling that, I don't know, I've been away along, so maybe I'm not the right person to talk, but sometimes they are not big issue, like small issue, and we don't talk to each other, but we maybe not talk directly, but we go maybe to another nuance, and so we create more disharmony by involving other people in our own view. So when you were talking about the free option about talking or going one's room and crying, there is the option also going to another nurse or even worse to a lay person and talking about the disharmony. So that
Okay, so that is another option. When we do that, that usually becomes divisive speech of the 10 non-virtues, because why are we going to our friend to talk about it? Because that person's a friend, and that person is going to agree with me. Because if they don't agree with me, they're not going to be my friend anymore. So part of my motivation is, I go to this person, and my talk turns that person against this person who treated me so badly. Of course, the real person I needed to talk to is this one over here. But I don't talk to that person because I'm scared. I'm scared and I feel vulnerable and I'm afraid they're going to run all over me. So I talk to my friend, and I talk to this one, and I talk to that one, and I talk to that one, and I get everybody else on my side against this one. Okay? That's divisive speech, and it harms the entire community. And if somebody comes to you speaking like that, what you have to realize, or if somebody speaks to someone else about you in that way, what you have to realize is the person who's speaking divisively is saying more about themselves than they are about the person that they're criticizing. So if I'm mad at so-and-so because so-and-so did whatever, and I go to you over here and I complain about so-and-so, I'm actually telling you more about me than I am about her. Because what this person is hearing about this person is slanted and biased and secondhand. What this person is actually learning is not about so-and-so, but they're learning that I'm kind of, I like to complain and I get angry easy. They learn that, I have a button about being respected or being appreciated or whatever. Yeah. And like I said before, if that person's really a good Dharma practitioner, they're not going to buy into my divisive speech. And they're going to turn around and say to me, it sounds like you're really angry. What really is the issue for you? What are you needing right now? And as soon as I start saying, she did this, she did that, he did this, he did that, my friend over here is going to say, the story is really not so important. I don't need to hear the story. I need to hear about what you're feeling and what is your need right now. Yeah? And in that way, then if this person can help me figure out, oh, I'm upset, or I'm angry, or I'm, irritated, or I'm lonely, or I'm whatever it is I'm feeling, because I need whatever it is I need at that particular moment. If that person can help me figure that out, I'm going to calm down, because I'm going to feel that somebody understands me. Because so often in a conflict, the basic thing is we feel nobody understands me. But often we don't understand ourselves because we're not understanding what's really going on in us. Yeah. So again, if we have a good Dharma friend, they can help us do that. If you have a strong practice, you're able to figure that out for yourself. But it takes a while to develop that ability in your practice to identify what you're feeling and what you're needing. Because many times people, depending on how they grew up, they never learned a language for describing their internal scenery. Their family didn't talk about emotions. They didn't learn how to identify these things. So, learning to identify that is a skill. And many people don't have it. So we have to learn it. We have to help each other learn it. Sometimes, another mistake I made, I should tell you, is sometimes I would think, okay, I'm really mad. I just need to sit on the cushion and work this out. So I'd sit on the cushion, practice all the things, strategies for working with anger. Yeah, make some progress, definitely. But I still wasn't completely resolved. And I had the idea that if I only sat on the cushion, then I could resolve it and I don't need to talk to the other person. But what I learned is sometimes I need to talk to the other person, whether or not I can resolve it myself, because sometimes I actually, believe it or not, misunderstood what the other person said. So I may be cultivating an antidote for a problem that doesn't exist because I didn't understand what that person was meant correctly. So sometimes it's really good to go to the other person and say, I just need to do a check-in. Yeah, this is what I heard. Tell me if I heard you right. And this is what I understood from what you said. Tell me if I understood you right. Because sometimes people don't, we don't hear or understand people correctly. Yeah. And it happens all the time. People often come to me after I give a Dharma talk about anger, and they'll come and say, you said we shouldn't get angry, but blah, 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 blah. And I said, I never said you shouldn't get angry. I never say that in a talk. I never say you shouldn't get angry. I say, when you're angry, you have to recognize it and resolve it. But I didn't tell you you shouldn't get angry, because anger just pops up automatically. But that person heard a should that I didn't say. Okay? So that's just an example, because we didn't misunderstand each other all the time. Yeah?
Isn't this something that often we as Westerners hear in the teachings, partly because of our Judeo-Christian background and so on, a whole set of that also expresses itself in a sense of guilt.
Yeah.
An inability to deal with difficult emotions because somehow we feel we shouldn't have them.
Yes. Exactly. Thank you for bringing this up. This is a big problem. And this relates to, was it you who asked that yesterday about being faithful to the tradition and yet being Westerners? Yeah. And this is a problem that our teachers do not recognize that we have. Yeah, because they don't have this. In Tibetan culture, the word should is fine. They don't have shame and guilt in the same way that the Western psyche does. Okay? And it's just due to our cultural conditioning. It's not an inborn thing. Yeah. But it is a big problem for us. Yeah. And if one person I remember, she came to me, and this is somebody who had been practicing many, many years, like 20, 25 years. And she came to me and she said, I'm really stuck on this certain point in the bodhicitta meditations. And I went and asked Lama so-and-so about it because it talks so much about the self-cherishing thought. So already I knew self-cherishing thought. For me, self-cherishing thought, incorrect translation that gives us the wrong idea to start off with. Okay? It gives us the idea that we should not care about ourselves, that we are not worth cherishing, that we are rubbish. Yeah, it's a very poor translation. Yeah, I use self-centered thought, self-preoccupation, something along that line. So immediately So we're taught we shouldn't cherish, she said, we shouldn't cherish ourselves. Self-cherishing is bad. So I went to Lama so-and-so and I said, when I meditate on this, afterwards I feel like I'm such a bad person for being selfish, that I'm a really bad person because I'm so selfish. And I just get so tangled up in this. Am I doing this correctly? And the Lama said, yes. Yeah, you should feel bad because you're so selfish. Which just made her more confused. Yeah. And then when we talked, I said, okay, first of all, it's fine to cherish yourself. You are worth cherishing. Yeah. What you don't want to do is become self-indulgent. But you are a worthwhile human being that deserves to be cherished. Second of all, the conclusion for that meditation is not to feel guilty, because you're so selfish. The conclusion for the meditation is to realize that our self-centered thought is something that is not part of us, that is something added on, that is not who we are, that is a thought that harms us. That self-centered thought is actually our enemy. So you don't think that you're a bad person for having it. You think the self-centered thought is something that is harming me, and that's why I need to abandon it. Because that thought harms me, it makes me do things that harm others. Nothing to feel guilty about. Yeah, guilt is an affliction that needs to be abandoned on the path. So we have to understand this. And our teachers are not the ones who can explain it to us because of the cultural difference. So as soon as you see that if you're doing a meditation, if at the conclusion of the meditation you feel guilt, you feel self-hatred, you feel shame, you feel anger, if you have any kind of emotion like that at the conclusion of a meditation, it means that you're not doing the meditation correctly. And what you need to do is talk to somebody who can help you figure out where you got stuck and where the misunderstanding is. Okay? Because we really can misunderstand a lot of things. Okay? I'm going to tell you another story. After a while, you guys are going to say, I wish you'd shut up already. But anyway, I have the microphone. So in the 6th session Guru Yoga, there's a phrase where you say to your teacher, may I do only what pleases you. That phrase drove me crazy. Because as a little girl, when I went to Sunday school, we were taught to please God. God was wrathful. If you didn't please God, you were going to get punished. The problem with pleasing God was the way to please God wasn't always so crystal clear. The rules of the game weren't so crystal clear about what you were supposed to do and not do. But somehow you were supposed to please God, and if you didn't, yikes. So I would hear the word, please the guru, my mind went to pleasing God. It drove me crazy. Yeah. So this is another time when I went in to see Rinpoche. I remember one time I couldn't stand it any longer. So I went to see him and I said this to him. And he just kind of looked at me. Yeah. You know, it was kind of another one of those then moments. Then. And, you know, and then I realized, okay, I'm misunderstanding something here. This is a problem with me misunderstanding the meditation. And so then I had to sit down and really work it out. You know, because the Buddha clearly didn't teach this in order to drive me crazy and make me feel guilty and confused. So somehow I wasn't understanding it properly. So what wasn't I understanding? What does please your guru mean? So it took me a while to understand that please your guru means keep your mind in virtue. Because what makes the Buddhas happy? When we create good karma, when we have a virtuous attitude, when we have a good motivation. What does please the guru mean? It means working with my afflictions and trying to put them down, trying to my best to cultivate bodhicitta even when it's fabricated and I don't really feel it. You know? So just my effort to do something virtuous is what pleasing the guru means. Okay? So I needed to translate that term into my own language so I understood what the meaning really was. Okay? So there's so many examples of this. But this is part of our practice, you know, and having these kinds of things, it makes you really go deeper so that you have to look and say, what's the purpose of this meditation? Yeah. The purpose cannot possibly be to make me feel guilty. Yeah. What's this meditation really trying to do? What is it really getting at? And then that is where you struggle with it for a while, you wrestle with it, and then your understanding gets deeper. I was just thinking, you know, of an example. I was talking about the good friend who says things to you. So, Connie, you were that good friend to me many years ago. We were, I don't know if you even remember it, we were driving somewhere in Southern California when His Holiness was there, something. So it might have been 1989, I can't even remember. But we were going somewhere, and I was having a very, very difficult time, and I was angry at my teacher. But I didn't know I was angry at my teacher. I just knew I was upset. I didn't put the word angry. I just used upset. So I was complaining to Connie. And Connie said, "Are you mad at him?" And boing, it was like children, you have to wake up. Yeah. Yes, you're mad. Anger at your teacher does not work. You have to look at this in a deeper way. Do you remember that at all? No? It's so funny, when we help people, we don't remember. But you were that good friend for me, and you made me go back and really look deeper and resolve my anger. So I need to say thank you to you. Even you don't remember.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You know? So that's a good example. Other questions or comments? Yeah. Another one? No, you. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, because I don't want to manipulate the
Yeah.
discussion.
No, it's
if
okay.
anybody
Nobody
else.
else is asking.
No, it's actually related to yesterday. Is it possible to go off early? Because yesterday you said that when we become ordained, monastic, we become part of a community and not individuals. And I was thinking about what does it mean to be in a community. And because there are people, maybe also like me, that goes up, live outside the community. And I don't know how can I, especially in this situation like we are, that we are not really in a monastery. You know? Yesterday you said that if someone cannot live in your monastery, then just leave. So this person probably is not part of the community. But here, if someone does not live here and live outside, is that part of the community? So I don't know if it's clear. Like I was trying to see how we can feel part of the community, even if we live outside or don't follow what all the other nuns do.
Yeah, okay. So what does it mean to be part of a community, especially in the situation where you have here? So it's the situation you have here is different than at the Abbey. Because at the Abbey we set up a monastery, then we invite lay people to come in, but they all know that this is our home and it's a monastery. Yeah, and the purpose is monastic training. Okay, here it's a lay center, and the purpose is teaching the Buddhism as widely as you can to all of society. Yeah, and the Sangha is kind of creating some relationship with the lay community here, but it's a work in progress. Yeah, because you're part of a lay community, but you also need to be separate from it. Okay, so how do you work on that? So you're going to have to think of what does being a community mean, given the current living situation, because the physical premises in which you live influence how much of a community you can be. It's like you said, if there's not a place here where everybody lives, and you're not doing your cooking together, and you're not eating together, and some people are living in town, and some people are here, and some people there, then the way you create community has to be a little bit different. Yeah, and so maybe community means having lunch together every day. Then somebody's going to say, oh, but I need to do this, I need to do that. Well, let's see, how can we bring everybody together and make community important? Or maybe community means, doing your evening meditation together. Or maybe it means meeting once a week for tea and just having a go around where everybody talks about their practice and what's coming up for them in their practice. Yeah. So to have some group activities that bring you together. Of course, once you start building and you have a separate place, then the meaning of community is going to change, because then the Sangha itself will be responsible for the buildings, for cooking for yourself, for arranging the daily schedule, for the upkeep, and so on. And then you're going to have to work together to decide, okay, what is all of that going to look like? And what is our relationship with the Institute now that we're all living together in a place that is a 5 or 10 minute drive away from the Institute? Yeah. So you're going to have different feelings of community depending on the physical, whether you're together in one place or not. Yeah. But if you can think of some activities that you do together, and also some ways, we have a way of having discussion groups at the Abbey that I would like to teach you. We'll be doing them over the weekend. We have a way of doing discussion groups that really helps people to open up and talk about what's going on inside of them. Usually when we have discussion groups, it's a question. Okay, there's 10 points of this. Please explain the third point. I didn't understand it well. That's what it's usually like. No, in our discussion groups, it's like, okay, here, like refuge. I would ask people to meditate beforehand on what does refuge mean to you? Not what is the technical definition of refuge, but what does refuge mean to you? How do you turn to the 3 jewels for refuge? How does that affect your life? Under what conditions do you turn to them? What does turning to them for help and turning for refuge mean? Are you expecting them to come and save you? Are you expecting them to give you a teaching? When you have a problem and you take refuge, what does that mean to you? What are you looking for? So we would give people questions that are very personal about your own practice. Yeah, to think about in meditation. And then after the meditation, we break up into small groups. And each person shares their reflection in terms of their own lives and their own practice about what they think about this. So everybody has to speak. Everybody can only share 3-4 minutes. So everybody has to speak. Nobody can take over the whole thing. And then only after everybody speaks, then we can have cross-talk and discussion about what we really mean. Okay? And so this is a way that helps people talk about their practice and what their practice means to them inside. Yeah? And it helps us open up and share with other people, and we learn a lot from other people, how they deal with different situations. And what we learn can help get us unstuck where we're stuck. And what we say to the group can help other people get unstuck. So maybe having some kind of discussion regularly like this, where people just check in and with each other and support each other and learn about each other and open up. Okay. Yeah. So you may or may not be able to get everybody to come. Even what we're doing now, not everybody's coming. It's people's personal decision. Yeah. If you have a monastery, then you can say these things are required. But here, when you're, there's a certain thing that's already going, it's hard to contradict. But you can say, everybody who's interested, come. And then when people see the benefit, they keep coming. Yeah. And you create a deeper bonding amongst each other, which is very helpful.
That's very nice, because sometimes we either meet for lunch, and usually we cannot talk very about our personal things, or we meet for pujas where we just chant in Tibetan, or we meet for meetings where we do like office decision.
Yeah.
So it's nice to it's nice to do this.
Yeah. To talk in a personal way. But it's a structured personal way. Okay? It's not just everybody pouring out their problems. We found that those kind of discussions work very well in our